Hi, everyone, and welcome to The X, a podcast from inside Silicon Valley about how experience shapes everything, from products to businesses to entire industries. I'm Brian McLean, and I'm here with Demetrius Madrigal.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I'm the founder and CEO of Rabbit. I'm so excited to be here today to present to you two things we've been working on: a revolutionary new foundation model and a groundbreaking consumer mobile device powered by it. Our mission is to create the simplest computer, something so intuitive that you don't need to learn how to use it. The best way to achieve this is to break away from app-based operating system currently used by smartphones. Instead, we envision a natural language-centered approach. The computer we're building, which we call a companion, should be able to talk to, understand, and more importantly, get things done for you. The future of human-machine interfaces should be more intuitive.
All right, everyone, welcome to the next episode of our podcast, and to be talking about the Rabbit today. That was the announcement from the CEO of this new company that announced at CES and been kind of taking the media by storm. Good morning, Dee. How are you?
I'm doing good. When you sent this Rabbit, was it R1 over to me? I took a look at it and I was like, I could see what they're going for, but
oh my God, it's funny. I was talking to someone the other day about CES because there was quite a few releases, and apparently this was the device that took off. That this is the one that everyone was talking about. A lot of questions. We can kind of get into the details of it. But before we do that, we were talking this morning about season 10 of the podcast, which will happen after this season 9. And we're talking about updating everything from music to going full video on the podcast with YouTube channels and clips and stuff. We're ready to kind of take it to the next level, which is great. And so we have some awesome listeners and we want to kind of expand that group. So what are your thoughts on it? Are you pretty excited about it?
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. I think it's a good thing to move forward. I think being able to add some visuals or even show our faces when we're having these conversations is kind of gonna build context and help everybody out.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. The other thing I was gonna mention is that CES this year gathered about 130,000 people or so. I mean, it was pretty big. Mm-hmm. When you and I went, it was about 180,000. You think it's back? You know what I mean? Like, do you think CES is now the launch of a lot of these like new and interesting products? Or are we turning a corner here? Because for the longest time, it was kind of just a marketing location. It's like a place to go to get like interest from the press, get in the news. You know what I mean?
I think that's still what it is, but we're seeing a little bit more like new products being announced with CES, where I don't feel like that was the case before. It felt like it was more a place to show things that you announced like a few months ago, kind of like how Apple was treating their head-mounted display snow goggle thing, whatever they're calling it.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know if the crowds are going to get back to what it was before, which I think ultimately is a good thing. Like keep some of the looky-loos away so that it's a little bit easier to get in and see things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how it feels like there's a little bit more engagement from the companies themselves as far as showing stuff that's new. They mentioned, the Rabbit. I keep wanting to call it the iRabbit because it feels like some kind of an iDevice, right? But the transparent displays I thought were really interesting.
Yeah, talk a little bit about those. What caught your attention?
Well, just the idea that it can fit into different environments and different spaces. Like when you think about how a TV fits in, or any kind of display fits into your space, you usually have to earmark it for like, okay, it needs to be here, and I can hide things behind it. I can, but it's going to take up space, and I can't like have it in the middle of the counter and stuff like that because it's going to be this big blocky thing. If it's clear, if it's transparent, then there's all kinds of different applications you can have for it. You can put it in different places. You can think about how it's going to locate your space differently. You can integrate it into a window or a mirror or any of these kinds of things. And we already have mirrors like that work in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But it really rethinks, I think, how a TV or any kind of display can fit into your environment.
Well, I think it's smart because a lot of the displays are now being used for so many different things, right? So
Mhm.
you could stream calls on them. You can watch movies, listen to music. It's a integral part of kind of your room or your environment. And I think the days of like I just hang this big thing on the wall and you kind of just have to deal with it, the look and feel of it, I think are kind of on their way out. I mean, I really like the idea of you look in the room, you don't even notice that maybe there's a TV in the room. Maybe it's turned into a piece of
Mhm.
art. Maybe it's a mirror, whatever it is. And then you want to watch some entertainment, use it for a little bit. Then it kind of turns into that device and it goes back to being something that's functional for the room. So I think that's kind of where everything's heading, anyways.
Yeah, and I was just thinking back to like the days of CRT TVs where you had like a 32-inch TV or weighed a couple hundred pounds,
Yeah.
and
And you'd
we've
have a
come so far.
whole big piece of furniture that holds it and
Yeah.
everything is the room is built around it. Oh yeah. It's really interesting how that stuff has shifted. But yeah, let's jump in and talk about this rabbit. So let me kind of explain what it is for those of you who are listening, maybe driving in your car and not familiar and didn't hear about this. So it's a small, about half the size of an iPhone, physical AI device with a tiny little 2.8-inch screen. It's got a scroll wheel on the side, kind of like the old Blackberries, but much bigger. It's got a push to talk button, kind of like a kid's toy. And then it's got a speaker and a microphone built into it. From the distance, when you look at it, it does look like a kid's toy. It was developed by a design studio that focuses on these kind of retro tech designs, which I always think they look cool. I think they're fun. Um,
Mhm.
and it's going to cost $199 with no subscription. So that's it. You buy it and then you're able to use it. Basically, what the device does, it manages or kind of uses your smartphone apps via what they call a large action model, a LAM, to navigate the app's interface to perform tasks. So, unlike using an API where it's making a call and it's asking it to basically perform a task, this one is actually looking at the actions of what you do and what is capable on that app and then doing them for you, but it's all done via voice and
Mhm.
confirmation through the little scroll wheel. So it responds to your voice commands and is capable of activities like booking rides, managing tasks, booking travel, answering questions. It even has advanced vision capabilities, so it can like look at a picture of a musician on the wall. This was one of their examples, and then it'll automatically determine who that is, and then start playing their music if you ask for it. So one of the examples on here was kind of booking a ride. I just want to use this as a framework for everybody before we kind of dive into everything. Basically, he looked at this device in his hand and he said, book me a ride from here to there. And it just says, okay, no problem. Your ride is booked. Uber's on its way. It's this idea that we're kind of trying and fighting to get away from having to like look at a screen and tap on things and just call out commands into the world like Star Trek. And then it happens, but it happens properly, effectively, and efficiently. Unlike the attempts that we've made in the past where you would do this stuff and then it would fail half the time. They're getting to the point with these neural networks and these artificial intelligent platforms that stuff is happening a little less um, clunky and more seamless. And that's basically what he was proving during this demo. What were your initial thoughts, D, on seeing the device, seeing its capabilities before we dive into like details?
Well, honestly, the first thing that stuck out for me is I don't see anything new here as far as the use cases.
Okay.
You're not really accomplishing anything you couldn't do otherwise. The advantage is you don't have to pull out your phone and use a physical interface. The disadvantage is you have to use a voice interface, which is one of the things that when Siri and Alexa and Google Assistant and Viv and all the other voice assistants came out, uh, people were touting this. You wouldn't have to pull out your phone. You can use things hands free. You can do all these kinds of things, and it didn't take off. And one of the reasons why it didn't is people underestimate the mental effort that goes into formulating your prompts in order to get the AI, because that's basically what those assistants were.
Yeah.
They're less advanced AI than we have now, but they were AI. And getting the right prompts in order to get it to do exactly what you want it to do it took mental effort and it was challenged. And a lot of times myself and I have Google Assistant, I have Alexa, I have multiple of them in the house. I don't use them very much. It's really not that much of a challenge for me to pull up my phone and tap on things.
Well, but wait, let's
So it's
pause you there for a second. Let me pause you there for a second. Okay. Two things came up when you said all this. Number one is that you said that, the whole idea of like how much effort it takes to kind of figure out how to formulate a question. Give me an example, give our audience an example of where people can get kind of stumped on this. Because we always see the very simple examples, D, like, hey, play U2 or something, right? That's not hard, right? But give me an example of something where it could be complicated, right? Or
well,
challenging.
like Amazon has been trying very hard to push purchasing through
Yes.
Alexa, right? So imagine you're trying to order something. Imagine you're trying to order your specific brand of shampoo or something. So you have to tell it, uh, you know, whatever assistant, Alexa, order this brand shampoo, this line within their brand, this size, and
Yeah.
there might be some other details. You have to narrow it down.
Mhm.
And most people are not really comfortable with doing that and not being able to visually verify that you have the right one. And you're also usually when you go to purchase something on a marketplace like that, you want to see who you're buying from. If you're not buying from the manufacturer and you're not buying from Amazon directly, you don't want to buy from some fly by night third party who's going
Mhm.
to ship this out in 3 months. And I think most people have had the experience before where they ordered something and then it doesn't show up in 2 days if you have Amazon Prime, and you go back and look and it's like, oh, this one wasn't eligible for Prime, and it's going to show up like 3 weeks from now, and all these other kinds of things. Those are all details of the interaction that are really hard to dial in through a voice only interface because not everything is that cut and dry.
Yeah, because you actually called out a couple things here. It's really interesting. So you picked one that actually is quite challenging. So you're like, oh, let's say I want some shampoo or something. You said, here's all the different dimensions that you have to have in your brain, or you have to be visualizing in your brain if you're not looking at a actual display, right? Is you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
number one, I need to know the brand. Number two, the type. Number three, the size. Number four, the cost range, let's say, right? Number five,
Mm-hmm.
who it's being purchased from. Like, so now you're managing five different things in your brain trying to get it done when you could have just literally picked up your phone, looked at it, said confirm, and been done. So I totally understand where you're getting at with this. And I think the thing that we forget, and I think that all of the people, engineers, everyone who's designing this stuff, I think they know this, but we're very optimistic, honestly, on being able to do things at a much more awesome level than maybe we're capable in the moment.
Yeah.
But the human side or the psychology of it is that whenever you take away the visual component of something, it increases the mental effort required in order to describe it or to imagine it, right? And so we're making it
Yeah.
actually harder on people. But I would actually disagree a little bit in regard to the audio maybe not being super useful or awesome, because like there are many times from a use case perspective where I use the audio on Siri and
Mm-hmm.
I thought to myself like, oh wow, this was so cool. And it was very simple stuff, but super useful. Like I was working out and I said, actually it creeped me out the other day, to be honest with you. I was wearing a pair of earbuds and I just said, Siri? Like with a question mark. Cause I didn't know if I had it turned on or not. Oh, it just turned itself
Mm-hmm.
on. And then it went like this. It said, uh-huh, in my ears. Not even like hello or anything like that. It was just like,
Yeah.
uh-huh. And I was like, someone's here, someone's listening to me. And then I said, can you increase the volume a little bit and change it to the next song? And then I just kept working out and it switched to the next song and increased the volume beautifully for me, right? I know that's just a simple command, but boy, did it feel good, to be able to get that done without having to stop and look at my phone.
So let me ask you a question before I kind of cover. You mentioned a few things that I want to touch on there, but
Yeah.
before I get into that, since you had that experience, how many times have you duplicated it?
The next time I worked out, but I haven't
Okay.
since, beyond this
So you've
example.
so you've done that one time since you discovered that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, you would hope. I mean, this is one of the things that when we're developing a product and we're like dog fooding or baiting, and somebody mentions like I had a really good experience. Okay, cool. When you went, has it become like a regular part of your life?
Yeah.
They say no, and then we have to understand why. And I think that for you, why do you think it didn't become like a regular part of your process?
Well, this particular example did become a regular part of my process because I don't work out multiple times per day. I think now that I know it's there, and it was literally a guess. I just was like, "Hello," um, uh, is now that I know it's there. Now I know I don't have to stop and change songs and things like that because these are new AirPod Maxes that I got for Christmas. Um,
Oh, you got AirPod
but
Maxes. Okay.
like the really nice ones, yeah. And so then I thought to myself, well, what else can it do? But that's the problem, right? Is I'm cataloging in my head
Mm-hmm.
capabilities when what they're really trying to get at, the engineers and the developers of these products, is that you no longer have to catalog, D. Anything that you can think of, anything that is even remotely possible, it will do and do it seamlessly. And then your behavior over time will change because you're no longer going to say in your mind, oh, I don't think it can
Yeah.
do that, so I'm not going to try.
Well, they're overselling it because it can't do anything, right? It can
Yeah.
it can do what. So there's one thing. There's so much to talk about. So it feels to me, just overall, like this is something that was developed by a team that doesn't have a ton of experience in this space because there are some obvious things that they kind of missed, like the before we get into all the issues with like a purely voice interface, which I think is one of their biggest mistakes, uh, is like the push to talk, right? Anybody who has done anything, any kind of work within the voice space knows that one of the major value propositions of a voice interface, and that's ultimately what this is, it's an interface.
Uh-huh.
It's a new interface to do the same things that you've always done before. The major advantage is that you're hands free. And
Mhm.
now you have a voice interface that isn't hands free because you have to do this push to talk button.
Correct.
So that just you're undercutting your own value proposition. So that's just one example of ways in which they haven't exactly kind of thought this through completely. It feels like they haven't done this before. So it feels
Well,
at the same time,
the co-founder came from Google AI.
well, I'm surprised then because he must not have like been working in the product level. Maybe he was
Yeah.
just in
Well, I want to
kind of
be
like
clear
core
about that,
technology
though.
stuff. But
You made a really good point right there. Like, let's be clear. I mean, we know a lot of wonderful people that work in this space, but they don't necessarily work in the product level. Once you take
mhm,
concepts and engineering feats, and then suddenly you're trying to turn it into a product, it's a whole other ballgame. It's a whole other group of
yes,
individuals to help you achieve that goal because it's
yes, and
something
I think
different.
that's very much the case with AI. Is that you have to dig deep on all of these use cases in order to get the AI properly trained, in order to productize it, and in order to deliver it. And I don't necessarily see that here. What I see is them saying we have this language acquisition, or not language acquisition. I see LAM. I think of language
Yeah.
acquisition model, going
Yeah.
back
Large
to like
acquisition
the
model, large action model.
large action model. Language acquisition model goes back to Chomsky and grad school and all that stuff. So, large action model, which kind of negates the need for APIs. And it kind of bothered me that they said that we're getting rid of app based because everything is still going through an app. You're just using this intermediary.
Yes.
So you're adding another system that's going to be, tracking your data and observing you as you're interacting with it. And it's another point of failure of it not understanding potentially what you're saying, or even if it understands what you're saying, not understanding what you meant, because we don't always say things, formulate things properly to represent exactly what we mean. And at the end of the day, voice is great and it's a powerful tool, but anytime I've ever seen somebody go too hard on voice to the point where they're neglecting visuals and neglecting other modes of interaction, it just hasn't worked. I feel like if they have a touchscreen on there, that
Yeah.
should be an option for interaction, and you have the voice also. But in that demo, when he was setting things up and had to walk over to his computer in order to actually get logged in and stuff, and I was like, oh man, come on, you could have worked out the. You're saying this AI can do everything for you except help you get logged in.
Well, no, he
That's kind
wasn't.
of a
Remember, he
point of
wasn't
failure
doing
right
that.
there.
He was logging in order to train the model
Well,
on a new
he did
app.
that later, but in order to get the thing set up with the
Yes.
different apps that you're using, like with Uber, before he did the mid journey training example, which
Uh-huh.
I don't think very many people will do. Uh, it's a cool concept, but it's for like the hardcore enthusiasts. But before, when he was setting up the Uber thing, he had to go through and manage logins through that. He couldn't establish a login through the device, which is just like, oh, this can do everything for you except the most fundamental thing that you need to do,
Well, no,
which I
I
thought
think
was kind of a
to
disappointment.
defend him, I think what he was doing is showing you that process. I think at initial setup, D, you would have all the apps that you would use, you would have them all engaged first, right? Logged in, engaged, whatever it is that they call it. And then
Well,
now the
but the
system is tied to
process
it.
the process is you would get your device, walk it over to your computer, and do all the login and setup through your computer
Mhm.
because like the large action model doesn't have a way of doing that. It doesn't have a security. I look at this and I think to myself, okay, well they did the push to talk because they didn't want to do the low power processor that's just listening for a wake word.
Uh-huh.
They did the large action. They did the all the login and identity verification through the computer because they didn't want to have to do that on their device because they didn't want to have to
Yeah.
think through that process because it's hard and it's difficult and it's risky.
Yeah.
So they pass things off because from a development standpoint, it was the easiest thing to do, and then they I think for some of them they're trying to kind of repackage it as like, oh hey, this is an advantage. The reality is, eventually you get logged out of these systems because that's just part of the security protocol, and you have to log back in. So you're
Yeah.
going to have to repeat that. And this large action model doesn't incorporate that. It's telling you it can do everything when it can't. And everything that it's doing is stuff it can do already. Like the whole order a pizza thing, you could have done that with Alexa, I want to say like within a year of its release. Same thing with the
Yeah.
Uber. You could always have ordered an Uber through Alexa. That's an 8-year-old use case through voice only. And some of the stuff I just saw that it is a capability that exists within Google Assistant that they discontinued because nobody was using it. So it's fundamentally, if they had the voice was a thing, but also the large action model is working within this system in order to kind of simplify user flows like you would with a macro, right?
Yeah.
Through both a voice and through a touch interface. So you can bring
Uh-huh.
this up and because for me, the only time I will ever use a voice interface is when I'm at home. I'm never ever going to do it in public, right? It's just awkward and weird. So if I can bring it up and tap like 2 buttons instead of 12 in order to do some high use case thing where because it's anticipating what I want, then that has a lot of value. And I think that's ultimately kind of how this is going to show up in the larger world outside of Rabbit. And I think if Rabbit can be part of that, that's cool. And I understand why they did this because breaking in order to do this, you need to have an OS on the device. You need to have access to everything.
Mhm.
And you can't do that by working within Apple or Google's ecosystem. You kind of have to have your own. So
True. Yeah.
they're coming from it. They're trying to tackle something that's very difficult because of just the landscape of the tech industry right now. But there's so many things. Like I wish we could have like had some conversations with them at some point and just said, okay, you're thinking of doing this, also do this. You're thinking of this, don't do that. These simple guidance things from people who've worked in voice and AI for a while and have learned some of these lessons.
Yeah. I see where you're going with it. And my overall take from a distance on this device is that this seemed like a demo of their software capabilities. And I know that sounds crazy because like everyone's talking about the hardware component of like, oh my God, the industrial
Yeah.
designers developed this retro hardware and all this stuff. And I was like, no one's going to carry another device with them.
No.
Period. It's done. I don't know why
No.
people in Silicon Valley keep trying to do this. Actually, it's not Silicon Valley. Actually, they're in Santa Monica, but it doesn't really matter. I don't know why people in the tech industry keep trying to create another device. You know that device that's in my pocket that Steve Jobs basically invented? that particular device is the greatest device I've ever had beyond my laptop. I love my laptop. And a laptop in general. I don't care if it's Windows or PC, just the idea of grabbing this little square box, take it with you, and you could do all these cool things with it. The reality is that every time we add another device, it's just another thing that you test for 30 days and then it falls to the wayside because so much of the capabilities can be embedded into the phone, right? And how can we imagine that Apple or Google or Amazon wouldn't be able to quickly and easily just copy this and just put it right into their devices and make it seamless? I mean, come on, look at those AirPod Maxes. Great example. I absolutely love them. They're the best like little earbuds I've ever had. I forget they're in my ear. I quickly tap them and instantly I have noise reduction. It cuts all the white noise out. They're comfortable. I leave them in for hours, forget they're even in there. Like, why not just embed all of this technology into that? All you have to do is say, hey, Bryan, you can ask for anything you want and it'll use your phone and go get it for you. So I understand that underneath the hood, I don't want people to think that we don't understand the technology here. I understand underneath the hood that the neural networks are doing this large action model, and I've done research on it, and it's really interesting. I think there's a lot of opportunity for how this stuff will be used to make our lives more seamless and interesting when it comes to using technology. But to me, it felt like a huge demo saying, please buy our company. Our team is ready to dive in and build something at scale, right? It didn't say to me like, this is the device. I mean, my first thought was, even to be honest with everybody, even with things that are easier, like smartwatches and stuff like that, I still don't even really wear those. I mean, I had one for a while and it was a little too much for me. To me, honestly, the greatest device, non-phone related, non-watch, non-earbud device I've ever seen is the Oura Ring. I swear every parent at the school I go to has an Oura Ring on. Like, it monitors your health. It looks like a really pretty ring that you can wear. It's really cool. Like, they're getting smaller and smaller. The technology is amazing. Blows my mind. That's the type of thing that I could see really kind of taking off in different spaces and stuff. But like, I thought this was a cool demo, but like, I was like, who's going to carry this? Maybe kids are going to carry it. I don't know. Maybe kids will be like, oh, I'm going to take this to school and leave my phone in my backpack. Maybe I'm missing it because I'm old.
Well, I had a bunch of issues. Like, I know that everybody looked at like the swivelable camera, and I looked at that and said, okay, this is just another point of failure. Moving parts are things that break, so you usually try to avoid them. And the push to talk thing was a weird choice. Like, it looked like it was a thing that was designed to not to generate sales, but to generate media attention. Like you said, like, hey, come acquire us.
Yeah.
And I don't know where the IP is in this, because I know IP when it comes to software is challenging. There could be data that they already have that is useful.
Yeah.
I looked at the large action model and I thought to myself, all right, this is something that is achieves something like an API, but outside of the bounds of what an API is, so that you're not dependent on the API's capabilities. But then I thought to myself, having worked within these companies, if an API doesn't have that capability, it's usually because that company does not want the API to have that capability.
True.
So that can motivate companies like Uber or anywhere else to try to lock it out. Like, this is why they have captions, that prove that you're not a robot thing, is they don't want it to have free reign. They want it to have certain things. They want to have access to that data. And now if Rabbit, or if there's an acquiring company or somebody else using a large action model who can get large scale usage data of somebody else's app, I'm telling you, like, Apple would shut that down as quickly as possible. They do not want people having that data.
Well, the interesting thing is like, how do you shut it down if it's basically scanning or looking at the actions of use on a phone, but it's not actually like using an API, making calls, or, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there's a way to do it, but like, my initial thought was like, it might take a little while for them to figure out how to control that.
They'll figure it out. Like, there's definitely ways to do it. Like, this has to be working through some kind of API in order to enable the large action model, right? It has to be doing something. And I'm sure that they can have the kind of hacker-based back and forth of like, try to lock me out and I'll try to break back in. But that's not where you want to be as a company. You don't want to, as a user, you don't want to be going in and have something like works one day, and the next thing you know, you're locked out of your Spotify account. Yeah. There's all kinds of things that you don't that a user doesn't want to deal with. So like this doesn't feel like it just doesn't feel like it's complete or done.
Hmm.
But I can see what they were going for. They were trying to
Me
break
too.
out of the confines of what like has been imposed upon them by the large companies. It's just I feel like they could have done a much better job, and it really rubbed me the wrong way that they marketed this as like, oh, this is some kind of crazy revolutionary thing, and I'm just looking at it like it's not. It's an improved. It's an attempted improvement upon like these voice assistants that have been around for a while, and ultimately, it's all just a new interface for doing what apps have already been doing. So I would have loved if it had some kind of hero case that was new and different and specific to them that other ones couldn't do, like other
Hmm.
competing apps or anything out there was couldn't do. Because then you can hang your hat on something rather than like this is a better version of Siri.
Yeah, one of the things that kind of struck me when I was watching it too is that a lot of these demos are basically just kind of copying the Apple Google demos. You zoom in
Mm-hmm.
on the product, you show it's like powder coated or
Oh yeah,
whatever.
he was
I
even
don't-
up there in the black T-shirt.
yeah, exactly. Right. Like that whole thing. Like the first thing my engineering friend texted me, like when I sent him the link to it, is he's like, "Oh, looks like someone ripped off the Apple model." Um,
Yeah,
but I'm over that. They've been doing that for like ever now, and I'm like, I don't care. I don't even that stuff doesn't really matter to me. I'm actually looking for
it's just
substance.
a minor annoyance, honestly.
Yeah, but here's one of the things. I mean, I give them props, dude. Anybody who could build and create things, I give them props. Like it's hard,
True.
hard, hard work. But one of the things that kind of struck me, and I don't know why at the moment, but end users don't really care what the technology is anymore. I think there was a time period where end users were like super interested, like, oh my God, I'm buying a 486 computer with extra memory and all this stuff. We've moved beyond that. It's all experience based now. Nobody cares if it's a neural network. Nobody cares if it's, what kind of processor it has in it. Most people don't even know what processor is probably inside of their laptop or their desktop or their phone or anything else or their GoPro. It doesn't matter because the assumption is that technology just works really great now, and it really does. Technology is amazing at this point in our life, and so they're just looking for exactly what you said: use cases and experience. The use cases that were called out are very similar to the ones that are already people can already do in different and in a different way. So that's why I took a step back and looked at it and said, this feels like a team saying, like, look, we're using a certain type of technology and we'd like to be acquired and we'd like to do this at a bigger level with someone else. That's what it felt like. Now maybe it sounds like an asshole thing to say, but part of the success model of the Valley is that sometimes we build things that are, everlasting, like huge companies, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes we build things and we put our best foot forward because we want the bigger company to buy us so we can go work with them on something that scales. Simple as that. And it makes us proud, right? So
Yeah,
no, I would be happy for them. I would be ecstatic for them if a big company picked them up and they got to go bring their team internally and go build something amazing. Like, not against that at all. I just calling out what I'm seeing based on experience.
yeah. It felt like a pitch, and it felt like very much like a technical pitch, right? It almost didn't feel like a product. You know what it reminded me of
Hmm.
was Google Glass,
Yeah.
where it was
Yeah.
less a product and more of a technology demonstrator, and that's what this feels like to me.
Oh, poor Google. They were so clear that this was not a product back then. They were like, we
Yeah,
just want to get it out to beta people so we could see if this is possible. And people were like, I can't believe you released this product. And I was like, they said 100
yeah,
times it's not
and
a
it blew
product.
up. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
one of those things that like suffered from its own hype. So
Yeah.
it's and they didn't even try to create the hype. It's just it spoke to, people were really interested in head mounted AR displays and stuff, and for a
Yeah.
good reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was really early and it was a technology demonstrator. And that's how I feel about this is that this is especially when they get into kind of the training aspect of the LAM, the large action model of just like that, like consumers aren't going to do that. Consumers don't do that. You know who does that are product teams within large companies who are developing capabilities and smoothing everything out, and then they package it up as a new feature and add it to their feature set.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I want to take a step back though, like that 30,000 foot view we always like to do. And I want to talk a little bit about this category because one of the things I'm noticing is this is the third or fourth funded company in this category. So you have
Mhm.
Humane, AI Pin. Wait, is that the same one? No. Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah.
they
Sorry.
actually, interestingly, they just laid off their CTO and a bunch of other technical people before the product went to market. Which
Yeah,
is like,
not a good
if
sign.
you lay off your CTO before you ship your product, that is alarm bells at the
Yeah.
highest level.
Oh, absolutely. But like, if you look at it though, D, like I forgot what the name of the round one was that you could wear around your neck or something. But there was like Humane's AI pin, and then there's the
I
glasses that are
don't.
being done by Ray-Ban, and then they have the rabbit, and then there's another one. There's a round one you wear around your neck. Is that
That
all
sounds
of these
horrific.
well, all these form well, all of these form factors are really interesting. So you have one you're holding in your hand, one you're clipping on your lapel, one you're wearing around your neck, and one you're wearing on your face. And you could see the trend of funding in the valley, hundreds of millions of dollars going towards a way to break away from the use of the phone, the holding the phone and putting it in your hand and doing something with it.
Well,
And then on the other side of
I would
it,
reframe that actually. I don't think they're trying to break away from the user experience of holding your phone in your hand.
uh-huh.
I think they're trying to break away from having to go through Apple and Google for everything. I don't think this is driven by a experience based thing. I
Yeah.
think it's just driven by business realities.
Well, I mean, there's been this obsessiveness though of like we need to get away from the phone and the earbuds. It's like why? It works great. Like, I did you see wait, let me just take a step. Did you see the new Ray-Bans? The new Ray-Bans that are
Yeah,
partnered with,
they've
right?
actually been around for a little while ago. They're Ray Bans that are developed with Meta.
Yeah.
So
They're
Meta developed all of the technology, and then Ray Bans integrated them into their glasses, so they look nice.
dude, they're
I don't know enough
unbelievably.
about the use cases yet because it looked like it was just maybe overlaying some things on your vision.
Yeah, so I think they're working. I'm sure that there's a ton of stuff that they're working on. I don't know all the details either because they haven't really like done a huge launch video on it or anything. But what I will say is that working on the aesthetics first makes so much sense to me because I saw those glasses and I was like, these look almost exactly like a pair of Ray-Bans. Like this is what we dreamed of a decade ago. Of like you put on these glasses, they're normal glasses, but then you can have them do something if you need to. This is the whole point is that we don't want extra stuff. I'm being clear to the industry. I don't want extra stuff. If you're going to integrate it into stuff I have, great. But don't give me
Yeah,
new stuff. I'm not wearing a necklace. I'm not wearing a pin. I'm not holding something in my hand. Not because I'm a mean person. It's because
yeah.
I have too much stuff in my pockets already and in my phones and, carrying in your car. Like there's just stuff everywhere. So I'm trying to trim down, not go the other direction.
Yeah, absolutely. There's number one, like I said, me and a lot of people like me, there are a lot of us, are not going to use a voice interface in public.
Yeah.
Maybe in our car, sure at home, occasionally for simple things. But just keep in mind that there's a reason why we started and all the energy went towards visual interfaces.
Yeah.
And there's always that's old saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So if you're going to be going into voice, don't abandon visual and physical. Make it integrate and sit alongside it. And I know it's more difficult to think through a multimodal interface, but if you're just going voice, you're really going to pigeonhole yourself. And I feel like a lot of this like standalone hardware is really trying to just break out and avoid like 30% Apple tax and avoid like getting their approval and avoid all of those things. Not to mention avoid Apple getting access to some of your data because Apple's been, and Google to a lesser extent, have been known to rip off other people's ideas and just copy them and put it out their own version of it.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
that's the thing. They observe, they see how many people are on it, they try to figure out a better way to do it, and they integrate it, right? They own the
yeah,
ecosystem, right? It makes sense from a business perspective. We probably do the same thing. But the thing is that when you look at it, um, the argument online against what you just said is the only reason you're saying, no, I'm not going to talk out loud in public or use voice in public is because every no one else is doing it yet. if everybody started transitioning to feeling comfortable talking out loud to their AI devices in public, then you would say, "Oh, I'm going to do the same," and then eventually you'll follow in line with everybody else. Just like when people didn't think we'd be walking around staring at a screen when you're walking down the street, right?
Well, I would disagree with that. Think about if you're carrying around a little Bluetooth speaker,
Uh huh.
uh, and you're in public. Let's say you're in a park, you're in a grocery store, whatever else. How many of your text messages do you want people reading back and forth when you're in that environment? How many of your notifications do you not mind them reading?
Yeah.
I think it's just a fundamental aspect of this is a private device. We don't hand them back and forth for a reason, right? Like when you hand somebody a phone, like you show somebody a picture, what's the famous saying? Don't swipe. Just look at the picture I gave you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't even pick up my phone.
Oh, yeah.
There's
Funny.
just
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
element of privacy, right? Like if you are having some text message thing with a family member, with your kids, with whoever else, this is a thing that doesn't have a headphone jack. So it's just going to read your texts out loud.
Yeah.
How comfortable
Well,
are you ever going to be with that?
well, let me ask you this. On your earbuds, can you imagine
Mm-hmm.
ever saying, like, let's say you had your, I don't know if you do integrated calendar into your phone or whatever, but did you ever get to a point where you're like, doing a hike or whatever it is, and then you would just say out loud, please let me know when my next meeting is today so that you know when to be back? Like, are you comfortable with very general statements out loud?
I mean, if it's reading it in my ear,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's reading in your ear. Yeah.
yeah, then I would be more comfortable with that. But at the end of the day, these are all things for me that I look at and like, this is solving a problem that's not really a problem for me. I just don't really have that much of an issue with pulling my phone out of my pocket. This is just convenience tech.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I see what you're saying with it. Cause like I was thinking about that. Like everybody's very different. Like a couple of use cases that came up with me is I was out jogging on this mound or hill or whatever near my house. And I got a text message. So my phone was zipped up in my pocket so I don't drop it, right? And I got a text message and it said, I'll play your text message, and just played it out loud to me while I was jogging. And then it said, do you want a response? And I just said no, and I kept going. And I thought, well, that stopped me from that helped me stop from running or jogging.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like that was useful, right? That was a useful use case there. It's all these very like simple little actions throughout the day. It's not
Mm-hmm.
big sweeping things like, hey, can you please
Yeah.
order me toilet paper for my house? Do you know what I mean?
Well, there's a reason why these are getting integrated into things like earbuds and watches because those are things that we've always carried around anyway, and they already serve a function. So it's adding capabilities to existing devices. People have been wearing watches since World War II, or it was World War
Yeah.
One when they were invented for pilots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's not changing necessarily what you're carrying. It's just enhancing it and adding additional capabilities, which is one of the reasons why an iWatch does really well,
Yeah.
but a standalone device probably wouldn't.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, I am wondering though, like what you think is going to happen with this thing. So the first 20,000 units, which we know is a first run, a first
Sure.
run for everyone who doesn't know means that like when you place an order in China or Mexico or wherever it is, and you're having a physical hardware produced, usually they require you to produce 20,000 units to start. So, anyways, the first 20,000 units sold out in 48 hours. Now, granted, this was launched at CES, so I mean, for 200
Hmm.
bucks, I mean, you and I could have each bought one just for fun to see what happens. So to me, it's more of an indicator of people want to play with it, but not an indicator of like, oh wow, like people really want this thing. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
it's. I just looked it up. Um, you know how many pet rocks got sold?
Oh my god, I can't believe you're comparing it to Pet Rock. I get the mail of like, hey, that was a rude comment. I think you should get the mail saying like, hey, D just
Give it
compared
to
this
me.
thing
Give
to a
it to
Pet
me.
Rock. All right,
Oh, I'm going to say that this has more value than a pet rock for sure. But at the
for
same
sure.
time, once you get to the point where what I envision for users, for most users, there's always going to be outliers and stuff, but most users who get this are going to play with it for a few days, maybe a week or two, and then it's going to go into your drawer and kind of sit there. And essentially, at that point, there's not that much difference between it and a pet rock. maybe I'll put it up on a shelf or something so people can see it and be like, oh, is that iRabbit thing? And then
Yeah. Not iRabbit.
you have to correct them that it's a Rabbit R1. But it's still more of a conversation piece than anything else.
Yeah.
So in that sense, like, yeah, I think it'll accomplish its goal in that sense. I think that this product is going to be kind of like, it's going to be like I don't know, like a 3DO or something like that you have in your house that people look at and like, oh my God, is that a 3DO? And you're like, yeah, that's what that is. That's largely what it's going to be. Now, I think ultimately what will happen is that this company and its IP, maybe its team, are going to get picked up by somebody else, hopefully, and not just run out, because that happens sometimes where it's like somebody's just like, oh, I like that idea, I'm just going to make it myself. But hopefully they get to benefit from this because they did take a big risk. They did work on something that was very hard. They did kind of develop or at least productize to some extent the large action model. So I hope they're able to benefit from this. And I think the way that happens is for them to either partner with or join a larger company that can really take action on this.
Yeah, me too. I wish them the best of luck. You and I poke around and have fun with it and stuff like that. But the people work hard. They work hard to build things and change the world and kind of try to make interesting things or whatever. So like, I always wish them the best with it. From a product perspective, I just don't feel very strongly about it. But from a team perspective, it seems like it took quite a bit in order to achieve this goal. This is a side note. So a long time ago, this is really interesting. I don't even know if I should share this. A long time ago at CES, this was a long time ago. They used to combine two conferences together in the same space. And it was the Adult Video Network, the AVN, right? Which is all adult. Is that
what it stands for?
Adult. Yeah, it's like Adult Video Network or something. It was like AVN, I think it was called. And then they would put CES together and it would blend. So you'd be walking from one hotel to another. Next thing you know, you're seeing like other interesting products, if you know what I mean. You're like, whoa, that year that I went, I don't remember what it was. I'm trying to think. I think it had to have been in the like early 2000s or mid 2000s, like that. So anyways, no, not mid 2000s. It was like 2002, I think, or 2001. Do you know what the most popular product sold, or popular product, I guess, introduced at the AVN / CES or what I think it was called. I think it was CES. But anyways, what the most popular product was called?
Well, they happened at the same time. I didn't know that they blended. I wasn't.
They did. Oh yeah, you go from one hotel to the other.
Conference at the time.
Well, we ran into the head singer of Kiss. What was that guy's name? What's that guy's name?
Is it Gene Simmons?
Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons was there all dressed up, and we're like, oh, he's here for CES. No, he wasn't. He was there for the other one. But anyways, I guess what the most popular product there was.
Was it also named after a quick forest animal?
Yeah. So it was called the Rabbit. And I'll let everybody else look it up and figure out what was going on. But I just think it was ironic because when this thing first came out and they called it the Rabbit, I was like, oh my God. When I was there, they had something called the Rabbit as well. But anyways, all funny put aside or whatever, like I do wish these guys the best. I'm curious to see what people think after they actually start really using it in real life. And whether or not this is going to turn into something that just is kind of a fad or what, but we'll keep track on it because it's interesting.
I just put my figure on what I think this should be and what I think it kind of, what they had in mind, maybe even when they did this. This feels like a B2B back-end technology that they put into a tech demonstrator in order to kind of maybe ramp up sales for kind of this licensing this large action model for other companies to use.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's also an awesome plan there as well. I think there's a lot of
AWS or ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of options here, especially when you have a talented team of people that were able to build something and pull it off like that. I think there's a lot of, what this reminds me of is Lytro a little bit. Remember Lytro cameras?
Oh yeah, we worked with them for a while.
So Lytro, I don't think they're around anymore. I think they were acquired. But anyway, so Lytro basically developed a lot of really cool technology that's now embedded into like all of the smartphones. But right at the time in which they invented that technology, the smartphones were coming out and people were like, I don't know if I want to buy like a complete DSLR or just keep my phone and stuff like that. And then over time, we saw all of that technology or that software technology that they created for their cameras really get embedded into smartphones, and then they kind of disappeared. So you got to be careful. And I don't think that they disappeared. I actually think they were acquired after quite some time, and then their stuff was
I'm
embedded.
pretty sure. So that IP was really interesting. It was tough. There was another company that was trying to do something different, but was also kind of in a tough situation, because in order for that technology to work, it had to be integrated into new hardware. You couldn't really do it with existing phones. Where now I think that the existing phones, cameras in phones and other devices have implemented enough sensors that are needed in order to kind of take the Lytro style pictures. And I'm hoping that the founder and whoever created this technology was able to benefit from that, because they definitely were doing something very difficult, and they had great intentions, but it was just a real uphill battle.
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened. Actually, I just found it really quick while you were mentioning that. Oh, this is going to play into the stuff that you talk about all the time. It says Lytro ceased operations in late March 2018. This is on Wikipedia. And then it said initially it was reported that Lytro was acquired by Google. That would make total sense, right? To integrate that technology into their smartphones. But later was reported that most of Lytro's former employees transitioned to go to work at Google.
Yep.
You've heard of that one
They just
before.
hired them away.
They hired them all away.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So got to be careful.
It's a tough world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I don't know if I mentioned this, but the Pet Rock sold 1.5 million units.
That's pretty good. How much was that thing? It was like
$4 each.
Wow. Hey, good for them.
And that was in the 70s, so he did pretty well off of that. Assuming he paid his taxes and didn't do anything that would have cost him a lot.
We should do that. We should make really, really awesome boxes and call it like the pet circuit, and then just put like a little tiny baby, like old used circuit board in there, and then people can just keep it on their desk.
Yeah, we can call it like Tamagotchi or something like that.
Yeah. Should do it. All right, guys, let's wrap this one up. D, this was awesome, super fun. We'll be coming back next week with something else very interesting to talk about. We'll figure out what that is between now and next week. But thanks everyone for taking the time to listen to us. Really appreciate it. We post all of our updates as well as video versions of the podcast on YouTube at the X Podcast. Please go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. If you like this podcast, found it interesting or informative, it helps us a great deal if you subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend, all those other wonderful things that gets our podcast growing. All right, everyone. We'll see you all next week.